Hey sports fans, are you ready for an exhilarating gaming experience? Introducing VIPclub.lv, your ultimate online sportsbook and casino. VIPclub.lv offers a vast selection of sports, from football and basketball to tennis and baseball. Bet on your favorite teams and enjoy the thrill of the game. But that's not all. Our state-of-the-art online casino offers a dazzling array of games, including slots, blackjack, roulette, and live dealer tables. Win big with their fantastic promotions, rewards, and exclusive offers. Join VIPclub.lv today and get a generous 200% match welcome bonus to start your winning streak. And make sure to use code ECSI at sign-up. Bet it, win it, and cash it at VIPclub.lv. Visit VIPclub.lv now and play responsibly. VIPclub.lv, your sportsbook and casino extravaganza. Must be 21 or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Visit gambleware.org for help.
Good evening, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the Wyndham Championship PGA, our weekly trip with good friend, colleague, and PGA expert and football expert, by the way, Brady Kannon. We're going to talk a little about last weekend, talk a little bit about next week and what this week's results will do for next week in the FedEx Cup, the last tournament before the top 70, I think, get invited to play for the FedEx Championship. Shout out to our new sponsor, the VIPclub.lv. Use ECSI at the checkout. Tell them JD sent you, and they'll take good care of you. And lastly, the guys behind the desk, the dream team, the summer of 2023, our interns, Mr. Ben Cohen, Joseph Shea, and Cade Horton, all getting ready to go back to school real soon. And they'll be missed, but they won't be forgotten. So without further ado, let's bring them in, Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Jeff Dawson, how are you, sir? Good to be with you again. And I want to thank you for giving me the week off, a little summer vacation last week. And I would have done the show, but the internet was a little bit shaky where I was. I was in the Great White North and have a freezer full of salmon to prove it. So thanks again for giving me the week off for the 3M Open. But I did get home in time to see the tournament you're talking about as far as referencing last week. Lee Hodges, his first ever PGA Tour victory, was really successful on the Korn Ferry Tour. I thought that was great how his golf coach from University of Alabama showed up, surprised him there on the 18th green. Really good story. And you recall, you and I were talking off air, I landed on Lee Hodges 3 weeks ago for the Scottish Open, and his statistical breakdown just really fit what I was looking for at the Renaissance Club over there in Scotland. And sure enough, he was 300-1 to win that, by the way. And I also played him for a top 20, and he finished 12th in the Scottish Open. But then he kind of fell off my radar a little bit. Now, he did come up on my board last week, but he was down a little bit further and just didn't really catch my eye. And also his odds had been trimmed in a weaker field. He was all the way down to 80-1. So, he just didn't grab my attention the way he did in Scotland. And I paid for it, of course. He went out there and won. But hats off to the young man. And all I can say is maybe we were on to him before a few others were.
We were talking, and you were right. As I was writing the notes down that week, and you said a bomb, you were going to go for a long bomb. And when I wrote 300-1 and checked the odds, I was like, oh my God, holy, what? And he must have heard the show, because you got him warmed up with the 12th place finish, obviously. And then, go on vacation, and the pictures were off the charts. And congrats on the fishing tournament. And then, holy cow, here's Lee Hodges. And as I discussed off air, I'm going to pull the photo up right here. Minus 24, okay? The next closest contestant, Mr. JT Poston, at 17-1, with Laird, Streelman, and then Keith Mitchell at 16-1. So he didn't just win, he won going away.
He sure did. It was 2 weeks in a row, really, where we had a heck of a golf tournament for second place. Of course, the British Open the week before, Brian Harman ran away with that. I believe it was a 6-stroke victory. And again, it was a heck of a tournament for second place over there at Royal Liverpool. But 2 weeks in a row, where we had quite a big margin of victory for the winners, Brian Harman and Lee Hodges. And some people found the Open Championship, anticlimactic. And I don't know if I didn't really hear much of that for the 3M Open, not as high profile event, obviously. But, I had interest in Harman. And even if I didn't have a financial interest, I found it, fascinating as a sports fan to watch him just dissect that golf course, the strategy he employed around the place. The way he was so mentally tough to bounce back even after he got a little bit shaky on Saturday and Sunday with a couple of bogeys. And Hodges, the same thing. He won wire to wire. He was your first round leader and also your leader at the end of the day on Sunday. And he never cracked. And, Brian Harman talked about that at the British Open. Having a 5-shot lead going into Sunday is probably more difficult than having a 1-shot lead or being tied or something like that, because it seems with every stroke that you have a greater lead by, there's more pressure applied because there's more expectation. So congrats to both Hodges and Harman for being able to hang on to those big leads. And in the case of Hodges, cash his first PGA Tour victory.
And I'm glad you brought up the Open, and because we didn't discuss the results of the Open, and leading up to the Open, doing our show, doing some more homework, I brought up maybe it was 07, maybe it was that far back, or someone said 2012, the year Tiger won it, and I thought he never used a driver there. He was able to just, as you said, stay away from those bunkers. I think he had one bunker shot the whole tournament there, and then watching the first round, and then as soon as Harman made his move, I was at the U.S. Open practice round at Brookline, and I walked. We were walking the front nine, and I got to the third or fourth. It was the fourth hole, and I'm standing right behind. I mean, from me to the wall, like 5 feet, and there's a rope there. In comes this little guy, this big, and just crushed the ball. And I turned to I'm like, who the hell? And he says, Brian Harman. And then I started putting 2 and 2 together. I was saying late Friday, early Saturday, Brady, this guy's not going to give you the tournament. It's going to take an act of God. This guy's not going to make a mistake here.
Yeah, he and displayed the mental toughness, and he's always been that type of player, a grinder, and a Georgia Bulldog, and really has that Bulldog mentality. Again, we saw him waver, falter just slightly on Saturday around the 4th or 5th hole or so when he made a bogey, and everybody was kind of like, oh, okay, here we go. And then he did it again on Sunday. But he made 6 bogeys all week. And on 4 of those occasions, he bounced back the very next hole with a birdie. So not only was he mentally tough to, ward off all the chasers and get that out of his head, the pressure of holding such a big lead, but he was also resilient in being able to correct his mistakes immediately on 4 of the 6 occasions. So hats off to the young man. I mean, just a tremendous performance that, whether or not I had money on him or not, I bet him at the halfway point after 36 holes at plus 150. And I said, even at the short price, I thought he was the best bet on the board. And it turned out to be, that way. But I did have a financial interest. Even if I didn't, I thought it was masterful to watch his strategy and the way he picked apart that golf course. I heard that most of those fairway bunkers sit out there at Royal Liverpool in the neighborhood of 280 to 285 yards. And his plan was to hit it off the tee 270, 275 all week. And he executed that to perfection.
He sure did. And it was great to watch. It really was. I know a lot of people disappointed the final major, and you want the big names, you want, that drama. But as a true golf fan, just to watch him, as you said, dissect that course, hats off to him. It was amazing.
Yeah, and to hold off players like John Rahm and Rory McIlroy and Jason Day. I mean, it was pretty cool. And yeah, would it have been amazing to see, take Brian Harman out of the equation and we see Rahm and Day and Rory and all those guys battling out? Sure, that would have been incredible. But still, it was pretty darn good, and I enjoyed it.
I'm going to ask you a question off the record here, off the tee box, I should say. 9 complete years now with Rory not winning a major. We know the Masters and the green jacket is if the one eluding the Rory Slam. Has seemed to rise to the occasion here these next 3 weeks at the end of the year to get some of those big checks in the FedEx Cup. Looking back, disappointed? I think he's had a pretty decent year. Again, no majors, yeah. I get it. But overall, your thoughts on Rory for 2023?
He's had a fantastic year. What was it? Did he miss the cut in one of the majors? Did he maybe the PGA? Yeah. I think he missed the cut by a shot, but made the cut in all 3 others. Or no, was it the Masters? He missed the cut, the Masters? I can't recall exactly, but I do remember that I bet on him in the Masters and had a really good number at 12-1. And I was feeling really good about it because he was coming into that tournament playing very well. It was in the fall that he won the CJ Cup in South Carolina. I think it was a 3rd or a 4th place finish or something like that in the WGC match play in March, just a month before the Masters. So he came in fine form. And I'm pretty sure it was the Masters that he missed the cut. Yeah. And I think he made the cut in the rest of them. But that was a real shocker when he missed the cut there because he was playing very well. And then you go into the PGA, he had a pretty decent tournament there. The U.S. Open, of course, he contended. He was right there on Sunday with Wyndham Clark, and he was right there again at the British. And he's had a few good finishes in between as well. So, he didn't grab the big prize of a major championship, but no, I think he's playing just about as good as anybody, or did play just about as well as anybody in 2023. And the swan song is still left here at the end of the year, the FedEx Cup playoffs. Obviously, Rory will be in that. He's your defending champion. And Eastlake is a golf course. I think he's won the FedEx Cup twice, maybe 3 times. I'm not positive, but look out for this guy. Here's another big prize. And I know it's not a major, but it's about the next best thing. And he might be ready to take that down again because the form's fine. The form's just fine. Rory's right there as one of the best 3 players in the world, and he really hasn't disappointed other than the major championships. And disappointment's a strong word. He's played extremely well in 3 out of the 4.
So before we break down this weekend's tournament, let's get everyone caught up to speed about how they get in. I think I was top 70, correct?
Yeah, top 70 is right, and that is the FedEx Cup points list or the FedEx Cup standings, which they keep throughout the entire year. Starts way back in September when the fall swing starts, and then over into January when we go to Kapalua and play the Tournament of Champions over there, and all the way through the Wyndham Championship. These guys accumulate points for how well they finish. You get more points for majors and bigger events and things like that, but at the end of the year, you see where you stand. And if you're in the top 70, then you go into the postseason and you'll be teeing it up for the FedEx St. Jude at TPC Southwind in Memphis next week. If you're not in the top 70, then, it's possible you could be looking for a job. Some of these guys could be, looking for a tour card or exemption or a PGA Tour status in 2024. It's really a harsh ending for a lot of guys. And that's why I think it makes this week so exciting because it's kind of all or nothing for a lot of these players. So you're trying to get into the top 70 to make the postseason. Now, in week 2 of the FedEx Cup playoffs, in 2 weeks, they'll play the BMW Championship, and that's only the top 50. So you've got the guys this week that might be sitting at 46th or 48th or 52nd or, somewhere in that neighborhood as far as the points list. And they've got things to think about too. They want to try and strengthen their position to get in or stay inside that top 50 or get inside the top 50 so they can extend their season by yet another week. And then finally, the Tour Championship, what I mentioned, Rory McIlroy is your defending champion at East Lake Golf Club in Atlanta. That's only the top 30. So, there's guys sitting at, in fact, Lee Hodges with his win last week moved all the way to 34th on the FedEx Cup point standings. Wow. So that guy has a lot to play for the next couple of weeks to try and get into that top 30 and have a chance to win the FedEx Cup and all that cash.
Last question. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. Two names that I know of fighting to get in there, Shane Lowry and I think I heard 17th or better, and Justin Thomas, or maybe that was Justin Thomas. Do you look at this when you were doing your homework and say, hey, here's what I got, and I'm going to add a top 20 on Justin Thomas. I'm going to add a top 20 on Shane Lowry, because if they do get in there, then obviously they're going to make the tournament next week, or is that just an afterthought?
Well, yes and no. Last week, I bet on Cam Davis because he was 77th in the FedEx Cup standings. Not only that, but I thought he fit the golf course really well. And it was kind of a bonus, the fact that he was one of those bubble guys trying to get into the top 70. I certainly don't want to base my handicap solely on the fact that these guys are motivated to try and get into position to get into the postseason. So Cam Davis did come through. He had a big Sunday charge and got to number 69 in the FedEx Cup points. So he's still really on the bubble. He can't falter that much or he's going to fall out. But I thought the timing was right with him and the golf course was right with him last week. Now, Shane Lowry, he's kind of been hot and cold this year. I believe he sits 76th currently. He did not make my card this week. And Justin Thomas, actually on my Heat Strokes podcast, our pizza money play of the week, I said Justin Thomas at plus 160 to miss the cut. Jeff, you know this all too well. When we get to the final couple weeks of the NFL season, we hear people talk about it all the time. It's a must-win game. Well, you know what? If it's a must-win game, you must not be that good, because you wouldn't be in that position where you have a must-win situation. Now, Justin Thomas, obviously he's not good. He's very good. He's just not playing very well right now. So I think there's a good chance that JT will miss the cut again. The pressure is even greater than it was last week. He's missed the cut in 5 of his last 7 starts. He's been working his tail off to try and correct it and get around the corner, but it hasn't worked out just yet. This guy is one of the best scramblers on tour. He's currently 148th on tour in scrambling, 158th on tour in putting, and 138th on tour in driving accuracy. So there's not a whole lot going well for Justin Thomas right now. And I don't think you can just flip that switch and say, oh my gosh, I got to really put my foot on the gas pedal here because I got to get inside the top 70. I got to get Zach Johnson. I have to impress him so he'll pick me on the Ryder Cup team. I don't think you can turn it around like that in the case of Justin Thomas. And I kind of equate it to a must-win situation in football. You must not be playing that well if you're in a must-win situation. And I think that's probably the case for Justin Thomas.
I love the breakdown there. 1,000% spot on there. I'm looking at the DraftKings odds now. Hideki Matsuyama plus 1,800. Russ Henley plus 2,000. Siwoo Kim plus 2,200. Sung Jae Im plus 2,200. Denny McCarthy 2,500. Sam Burns 2,800. Shane Lowry 3,000. Justin Thomas 3,500 with JT Poston, Adam Scott, and Aaron Ray at 4,000 with Adam Hadwin. As we always do, I am going to pass it to you and let you take over from here.
All right, my friend. Well, that's a pretty good number on Sung Jae Im at 22. I've seen him down as low as 16. He is on my card this week, and I got him earlier in the week at 20-1. It's very interesting, the nature of this tournament with everything on the line and the lack of real big names. Certainly there are a handful, but you've got maybe 40 players in this tournament that all seem to kind of fall into the same basket, that good above average tour player, but, kind of a lesser known type of guy. And you could almost pick any one of them to win. And the odds makers, I think, were in the same boat because there was a lot of shops that didn't have anybody shorter than 20-1 this week. So I think there was some value to be had on some of these guys that, were in the neighborhood of 50, 80-1, what have you. But I grabbed Sanjay as my shortest shot. He's played this tournament 4 times. He's never missed the cut, and he's finished top 10 3 times. In his last 36 rounds, he is 8th in this field for birdies or better gained. He's 6th in this field on the par 4s. Strokes gained on the par 4s measuring 400 to 450 yards. That's what the bulk of the par 4s are going to fall in between 400 and 450 on this golf course. Also, correlated golf courses I used TPC Potomac, TPC Sawgrass, TPC River Highlands, Harbor Town, where they play the RBC, Sea Island, where they play the RSM, East Lake Golf Club, where they play the Tour Championship, and then also Innisbrook, where they play the Valspar. And this is one of the most predictive tournaments we have of the entire season. Guys who typically play well here tend to repeat that in following editions. And the same with the correlated courses. Guys that play well at those courses, often, it'll cross over to success at the Wyndham. And you look at some of those courses I talked about. Sanjay M was 6th this year at Sawgrass at the Players Championship. He was 7th at Harbor Town. In his career, he's finished 4th before at the Valspar, and he was 2nd last year at the Tour Championship at East Lake. So he checks a lot of boxes for me. And then my second shortest shot was Denny McCarthy at 28-1. Last 36 rounds, he is 6th in this field for birdies or better gained, and number 1 for strokes gained on the par 4s between 400 and 450. 16th in scrambling, 16th in strokes gained putting on Bermuda grass. He was 9th here at the Wyndham in 2020 and 9th at the Valspar in 2019. This season, also a 7th at the Travelers and a 13th at TPC Sawgrass for the Players. And then a little bit deeper, we go to Chris Kirk at 50-1. You and I have talked about this on a couple of occasions, this similar type of setup where Chris Kirk is just lights out with his short irons. Probably the best player in this field from 100 to 175 yards, and that's where the bulk of your approach shots are going to come from this week. He won the RSM Classic at Sea Island. He's also finished 4th there twice. He's finished 7th at Harbor Town in 2021, and he's also finished 4th in his career at East Lake at the Tour Championship. Last 36 rounds, 26th in this field for the strokes gained on the par 4s, 400 to 450, and 7th in scrambling. A Donald Ross design, you have those shaved runoff areas around the green. So when you do miss the green, you're going to have to be able to display a deft touch to get up and down. Chris Kirk, 7th in scrambling, pretty darn good at that. At 55-1, Brendan Todd, one of the most accurate drivers of the golf ball on tour. He is 10th on the PGA Tour for driving accuracy. Just comes off of a 2nd place finish at the John Deere 3 weeks ago. He was 10th here at the Wyndham in 2021. Last 36 rounds, he is 23rd in this field for birdies or better gained, 3rd on the par 4s, 15th in scrambling. He's finished as high as 4th at the RBC Heritage, 11th at the Travelers, and also owns a 4th place finish at Sea Island. And then Adam Schenk at 100-1, my triple digit bomb here. This guy's had a phenomenal year on tour with a 2nd place finish at the Valspar, a 2nd place finish at Colonial, a 7th place finish at the Memorial, and a 4th place finish at the John Deere just a few weeks ago. Also a 7th place finish at the Rocket Mortgage just a couple weeks prior to that when Ricky Fowler won the Detroit Golf Club, by the way, another Donald Ross design. Last 36 rounds, 7th in this field for strokes gained approach, 8th on the par 4s, and also 3rd in hole proximity from 150 to 175 yards. We mentioned that being one of the measurements there where you've got to be spot on, and Adam Schenk, one of those guys for sure. And then finally, my last guy, also a triple-digit bomb at 100-1, Davis Riley. I'm going for 2 Alabama Crimson Tide golf team members 2 weeks in a row on tour. This guy is really good with the irons. Not a great putter, but he can really stuff it with his irons. Last 36 rounds, 25th for strokes gained approach, 21st in this field for birdies or better gained, 16th on the par 4s from 400 to 450, 15th in hole proximity from 100 to 125, and 25th in hole proximity from 125 to 150. Had a second place finish, lost in a playoff at the Valspar last year, and also last year was 13th at the Wyndham. So you can kind of see the pattern with all of my guys. They've had good success on the correlated courses. They've had good success at the Wyndham. They're good on the par fours. This is a par 70. You've got 12 of the 18 holes are par fours this week. Again, most of which measure 400 to 450 yards. And then that approach play from 100 to 175. And you got to make some birdies. The pre-tournament proposition bet here was under or over 20.5. And I think you're probably going to get to that neighborhood, 18, 19, 21 under par, somewhere in that neighborhood. So you're going to have to make some birdies as well. So, every one of my guys kind of fits the same profile. And like I said, there's more guys out there that, that the Adam Shanks and the Chris Kirks and the Denny McCarthy's, that above average tour player. There's a lot of guys on the board this week that fit that profile. But I went with the guys that I think had the most boxes checked for the categories I was looking at.
Well, you saw me smile when you got to the Todd father. So I
knew that one would make you push your button.
So great lineup here for sure. As you said last week, an 80-1. It'll be kind of interesting to see. You got the top covered with him and McCarthy, couple in the middle with Kirk and Brendan Todd, and then the 200-1 shot. So I love where your eyes are there.
What's interesting, Jeff? Let me interject here. Over the last 13 editions of the Wyndham Championship, your average price on the outright winner has been better than 150-1. And a lot of that was offset by Jim Herman. I was lying in bed in 2020, and for some reason, Jim Herman at 500-1 caught my eye, and I was about to put $5 on him, and I said, no, I'll skip it. Sure enough, he went on to win at 500-1. So that skews that average a little bit, but still, the point is a lot of long shots do win here.
Absolutely. My last question before we get to first round leaders and head to head, guys that are already in, that maybe working on a couple things. Do the tendency is, hey, I'm in, struggled the first round, work on some stuff. Do you see an easier time here? Maybe, as you said, Justin Thomas not to make a cut at great odds there. Are there certain guys that you could maybe try to take a look at, or am I trying to get too cute here?
No, I think it's worthy of consideration. And I think the guys that are outside the top 70, especially guys that are close, I think Gary Woodland is probably the furthest away of the big names at 90. He's 90th on the points list. I think once you get beyond 100 or whatever, you basically have to win the thing to get in, or maybe a top 5 finish or something like that. But those guys from, say, 90th on the points list and down to 71st, they're feeling a lot of pressure. Now, the guys that are probably ranked somewhere around 40th, 35th, something like that, yeah, they've got a little bit of a free pass this week. And I think a lot of times that's a good situation to bet on. Now, we talked about it earlier. They're still trying to push and get into the top 30 or the top 50 or whatever, but they're not feeling the pressure of the guys that, might have their season coming to an end. And yeah, if they're just going to go out here and be relaxed and let's work on a few things for the playoffs next week, sometimes all of a sudden they find themselves 2 shots off the lead on Thursday and they're like, hey, we're on to something here. And no, so I think that relaxed approach is not always a bad thing. It's sometimes different the week before a major. I'm just going to go, do a little tune-up here, and if I miss the cut, I don't care. A little bit different this week. You miss the cut this week, and you do care. So, yeah, I think those guys that are solidly in position to make the playoffs and really could not find a way to mess that up, they might be a little bit more relaxed this particular week, and you never know what might happen. I don't know who that's going to be. That's the hard part, but I think you could look at some of those guys and that mentality, I think, makes some sense.
And a guy that's top 10, 15, 20, 25, next week, I mean, if you're in the top 70, you said after next week, the cut goes to 50 and then
Right.
the last week is 30. So if I was in the top 10 or 15, even though I know I'm going to be able to play in the second weekend, is it a must that you show up on that weekend?
Next weekend?
Yes. All top
Yeah,
70
yeah, I
have
think
to
you.
show.
Oh no, next weekend. I would imagine some guys might skip it. I mean, maybe John Rahm. I believe John Rahm's number one in the points right now. Maybe he still skips next week. Most of the guys in the top 30, there's a few of them, but most of the guys in the top 30 have skipped this week.
Okay.
And you know, if you're 26, 28, 32nd, I don't think you're skipping next week. But maybe if you're in the top 10, maybe you even choose to skip next week. I don't know. There might be one or two of them. But I think you're probably going to see just about everybody that's even in the top 30 show up next week in Memphis.
All right. First round leader and head-to-heads.
Yeah, head-to-head matchups. I went back to a couple guys that I played outright. I took Adam Schenk at even money over Alex Noren, and then I took Davis Riley at -110 over Sam Ryder. And then for first round leader, I took Aaron Rye at 50-1. This guy has a knack for getting out to a quick start on Thursday. He's one of the few players in this field that is inside the top 10 for strokes gained approach and strokes gained on those par fours from 400 to 450 yards. So he, that's pretty strong. Top 10 in both of those categories. Over that same span, the last 36 rounds, he's also 20th in birdies or better gained and number one in hole proximity from 150 to 175. Earlier this season, he opened up the RBC Heritage by shooting a 63. He also shot a 67 on Thursday at the Travelers, and then backed that up with a couple of 66s throughout the rest of the 4 days of that tournament. And then it was just last month that he began the Rocket Mortgage with a 65. And again, the Rocket Mortgage Detroit Golf Club, another Donald Ross design. Then I played Andrew Putnam at 66-1. And the two strongest categories for what leads to a first round leader are strokes gained approach and strokes gained putting. And Andrew Putnam is a guy that has that combination in spades. Very good on approach and one of the best putters in the field. He has opened with a 65 earlier this year at one of our correlated courses, Sea Island. Also opened with a 67 at both Harbor Town and River Highlands. Last season, he shot 64 here at the Wyndham, but that was in round 2. So we see if we can put that together in round 1. And then I mentioned his putting. Last 36 rounds, he ranks 5th in this field for strokes gained approach or strokes gained putting on Bermuda grass greens. And then finally, I went back to Davis Riley. This guy actually got first round leader honors back at the Memorial Jack Nicklaus's tournament in late May, early June. He opened that tournament by shooting a 67. He finished 13th in the Wyndham Championship last year, shot 4 rounds in the 60s. So he has the ability to go low here at this golf course. He was also, I mentioned, runner-up at the Valspar Championship last year, and he opened that tournament with a 65. And, we're just banking on, and now Lee Hodges, his, Alabama Crimson Tide team member there at Alabama, just hoping, and Hodges did it last week, got out to the first round lead, maintained that all the way through. We wouldn't mind that with Davis Riley this week.
What was
Roll
Davis
Tide,
Riley?
Jeff, roll Tide.
What was Davis Riley's odds?
80-1 on
80-1.
first round leader.
Yes, and Mr. Hodges even got a call from Sir Nick Saban as well on Sunday after. So roll tide as we're getting closer to Labor Day weekend and college football. What a back-to-back weekend it would be for Alabama alum to win back-to-back golf tournaments. That would be something for sure. The scroll has been going the whole time. Everyone following, watching, and listening, we thank you. Please, 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 if you're not following Brady, go over to Twitter. Go over to Las Vegas Golfer and also Heat Strokes Pod. You can get his work there at Golf Bet at PGA Tour. Tonight at 10:15, I would assume, Sports Grid TV. But I'm not going to say that. I'm going to give you the fairway to finish it up.
Well, I would just be regurgitating what you said there. That's exactly right. Thank you for that. Yeah, PGA Tour golf bet. You can find my first round leader article up there now at pgatour.com. Sports Grid later this evening, about 7:12 Pacific time, 10:12 Eastern time. Be on there with, I believe, Joe and Scott Wetzel. I can't remember who I'm on there with tonight, but yeah, if you follow me on Twitter at Las Vegas Golfer, you can get all the updates for what I'm doing.
Well, we can't thank you enough. We got a couple more weeks. Next week, the first week of the postseason in PGA, the top 70, they're interested how that shapes out. And then the following week, as we break it down to the top 50. And as we talked off here, the final week, I remember, I think it was 2 years ago. You said Rory won last year. I think it was 2 years ago. Rahm started the tournament with like an 8-shot lead or something, or maybe I'm confusing it. So it's almost physically impossible, other than taking a couple darts, to have anything on an outright on that final week.
Yeah, I was talking about this last weekend on Sports Grid with Mark Zeno, and I think the format that they use, you have to incentivize the players to somehow accumulate points in the FedEx Cup standings in order to get that top spot when they get to East Lake for the Tour Championship. And the way they reward them is, I think they start them at 10 under par. The next guy starts at 8 under, and, all the way down to, whoever's 30th on the list starts at like even par, 10 shots behind the leader or something like that. So it's not a perfect system, but it's probably the best system that we've ever had. And I really don't have the answer. I don't know how you incentivize guys to try and, move up the points list all season, and what do you reward them with at the end. It was a few years ago that Xander Schauffele, at the Tour Championship, he actually shot the lowest 4 rounds of the tournament, but because of where he started, Dustin Johnson actually won the FedEx Cup. So it doesn't always go to the guy that plays best for those 4 days, but hey, there's probably something to be said. It should go to the guy that played best all year long. We will see. It's a tough one to handicap, one I don't bet on too much, but you're going to get the top 30 players roughly in the world, and that's always fun to watch.
Well, as always, we can't thank you enough. From myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, from the one, the only Mr. Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer, at Heat Strokes Pod, and at 10:12 Eastern. Go find him on Sports Grid TV. Everyone, thank you so much. If you missed it, came in late, go over to our YouTube station. Make sure you write down all the winning bets that Brady has given us this week, and we hope to cash some tickets this week. So thanks, Connor McLaren, for watching all our shows and tonight, and we wish everyone a blessed evening, and we will see you soon.